Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another issue of Ask Dave. Today our question comes via a slightly different route, and that is as a comment to video number 1, Ask Dave number 1, on antenna analyzers. That was my very first Ask Dave video quite a long time ago. And Terence Barfield, he says he's in the UK, so that's a wet area, and I think that drives a lot of the questions that he has here. Let's dig in and see if we can do anything that will be helpful here. Okay, he says, Dave, good morning, sir. Antenna questions 1. Say a long wire, say 160 meters, how can I make this into a balanced antenna? Well, if you make it into a dipole or a full-length loop, it's a balanced antenna. If you make it into a beverage antenna, it's not going to be balanced. Basically, if it's end-fed, it's going to be unbalanced. If it's a dipole, it's going to be balanced. But the thing is, you can't practically make a 160 meter vertical, which would be an unbalanced antenna. It's just too tall. 160 times 3 is just gobs of feet. It'll be as tall as a small broadcast, AM broadcast band tower. The AM broadcast band towers are a quarter wave, and as the frequency goes up, they get shorter, and the 160 meter band is just slightly higher in frequency, therefore slightly shorter than the antenna for the top of the broadcast band. Okay, must all antennas be insulated away from the fixing master tower? No. Very often for something like 160, you can actually use the tower as the mast, as part of the antenna or the vertical antenna. I once saw a very interesting antenna. Let me just draw it in here real small. It was a tower. Okay, and it had just gobs of guys coming off of the thing like a Christmas tree. And the tower sat on a glass ball, which then sat on the foundation. And the glass ball insulated the tower from the ground. And then they made this into a vertical, and I think they still had to have some kind of loading mechanism, because this was a low-frequency aircraft beacon in the hundreds of kilohertz region, and it was huge. And we were given that antenna with the proviso that we take it down, and that turned out to be a huge job. But I remember that ball. It was probably this big in diameter, holding that thing up, and it was the insulator for it. But normally what hams do is that the towers are connected to ground. The base of it is in the ground. All of the connecting hardware is conducting and connects it to the ground. You know, even if it's a vertical and it's 160 meters tall and grounded at the bottom, you can put a gamma match on it. I'll have to look up gamma matches, but you're going to need some capacitance and some level of, let's see, you're going to need capacitance, okay, and you're going to tune that capacitor, and then that will come in to the side. So it's going to look like something like this. This is grounded. You're going to come up here, and there's going to be some capacitance, and then you feed the antenna. And then this fed right here, you'll have this main line and there's your ground right there, and it is unbalanced, so you would feed it with coax. Okay? So let's go back and look at the questions here. Must all antennas be insulated away from the fixed mast or tower? No. And in fact, many Yagis are made of a metal boom with metal elements, and they're all attached to the central boom, which then is attached to the tower itself. And that works just fine. Today on the newer antennas, people are tending to insulate them from the boom. Okay, they don't have to be. Is there any fixing or assembly precautions when fitting a dipole antenna? Cut it to the right length. Get it high enough in the air that it's not going to guillotine somebody when they're walking by. Try and get the center up like a inverted V if you can't get the two ends pretty high. The optimum height for an antenna, dipole antenna, is half of the wavelength, which is pretty high for most people. So you're going to end up putting it lower, which means it's going to be somewhat of a compromise antenna, but it can still work fine. Okay, let's see, fourth. In truth, what is meant by a balanced antenna? Is a balanced antenna better than unbalanced? No, not at all. I've shown a picture a number of times that shows if you have a balanced line, as electrons go this way in this line, they go this way in this line. And then when they go this way in this line, they go this way in this line. In other words, these mirror each other. Okay? So, now an unbalanced antenna, you've got a coax, which is a tube, and it's covered with protective mesh, okay, which forms the ground. And then there is a wire in the middle, okay, and the electrons on this move first this way, then they move this way, then they move this way, and what's out here, the electrons, in theory, don't move. Okay, this is unbalanced because the current here and the current here are not a mirror image of each other. So it's unbalanced. A little big there in the drawing. Let's get back to the questions here. Okay. Is a balanced antenna better than unbalanced? I don't know. Vertical antennas are unbalanced. They're great antennas. Horizontal dipoles are great antennas. They're balanced. Yagis are great antennas. They're balanced. There's just all different kinds of things. It's just a characteristic, and it affects the way you feed it and the way you tune it, okay? So it doesn't make one better than the other. I have my, it's a hex beam out there, which is actually a beam antenna, and it is a balanced antenna, but it has a choke balun on the thing so that it can be fed with unbalanced line. And then I have a couple dipoles out there. They're on the ground right now, one of which is the station reference antenna, the MFJ 2010. It's a very nice antenna for less than $100. And then I have the vertical, which performs as well as any vertical, very well, in fact, and it's an unbalanced antenna. Mox Nix, can you do an unbalanced feed to a balanced antenna like a Yagi? Yes, you can. There are usually a gamma G-A-M-M-A, match, gamma match, the Greek letter gamma, match antenna, or a match to a coax that can take it right to that antenna. Works very well, has been proved for years. Okay, how would I 100% waterproof all RF connectors and joints from Radio Shack up to and including the antenna at the mast? Okay, understand that you can get coax tape. It's a rubber tape. You can get it from any of the manufacturers. DX Engineering, trying to remember the name of the big outfit in Britain that sells just about everything for ham radio. You can call them and ask them for coax sealing tape. And it comes with a tape, and there's a piece of clear plastic between each layer. And you stretch it to activate it, and you wind that on the thing. That tape fuses to itself, not to anything else. And you can cut it off at some point and take it off and do what you have to do. But the stuff that's actually coax seal is very good for wet environments and is not susceptible to UV damage. You can also get from Ace Hardware this kind of antenna right here. It's insulating tape 2CFB. Now it has, here's the plastic between the layers, and the layers, they'll stick to each other. But this is not UV resistant. So you have to put another layer of electrical tape over it. Now, you say, what is an absolutely waterproof RF box? There's no such thing. Here's what happens. You put a box outside and seal it the very best you can. And then open it up in a year and there's going to be water in there. Here's how that works. At night, the air cools. And as it cools in the box, the pressure goes down. And air will seep past the gasket and get inside the water bottle, or inside the box. And then when it gets hot, the air gets hot, it can absorb more moisture, and it gets forced out of the box because the pressure gets higher, leaving the water behind. We had a terrible time with the radar down at 660th Radar Squadron when I was there in the Air Force with the box on the radar assembly itself that always had water in it. Finally, one of the old-timer NCOs drilled a little 1/8-inch hole in the bottom of the box, and that always allowed the pressure to equalize. And because the pressure was equalized, we didn't get condensation inside the box, and the box stayed dry. So that's something to consider here. Just a box that's open to the bottom can be good for keeping things dry if you're doing these connectors in a box. Okay. A waterproof antenna box, I can use the antenna fixing point at the mast. Well, just, I wouldn't put the connectors on the bottom of a box because you get water dripping around it there, but up further inside the box. So you can make a little chassis, sub-chassis to put the connectors on, and then up inside of a box, which will do fine. Please, what is the best antenna software I can use to resize antennas to fit into my garden backyard, which is only 20 feet in width, 50 feet long apparently? Will the resized antenna work as well as the full size? That doesn't work. We tend to use in ham radio resonant antennas. So when you make an antenna smaller, you scale it. what happens is the frequency that the antenna is resonant at goes up. Now, the only way around that is to add loading. You can add coils at the base of the antenna and capacitance at the end of the antenna, just with some elements perpendicular to the main element. Scaling antennas doesn't work because the frequency at which they're resonant changes. Okay. What is the best way of protecting the antenna and mast tower from lightning strikes? Well, a direct hit, it's always unpredictable what's going to happen. I have had my station suffer a direct hit. It was very noisy. But if you get nearby hits, you can easily protect against that with lightning arresters and so on. Each leg of the tower should be grounded to a ground rod. Okay, and then you should have your coax come down and attach to at least the outer shield to the ground there, or put a lightning arrestor in. Run the coax over to where it enters the house, and you want to put a ground rod in, a lightning arrestor. Should these ground rods be connected to each other? Yes. In the USA, it's number 6. Let's see, number 6, twisted, not solid, but stranded, copper wire without insulation, and that will go between the ground rods out at the tower and along over to the ground rod that goes into your shack. See my video number 8, Ask Dave number 8, for information on that grounding. Okay, must the mast tower at ground level be insulated? No. Contrary to that, must the tower be earthed? Earthed is the British term for grounding. It must be earthed. Okay. Please, how can I stop the antenna being attacked by weather eroding the metal aluminum? Aluminum is attacked by weather, but it forms metal oxide. And then metal oxide, when it gets to a thick enough point, and it's not very thick at all, acts as a shield to keep further oxidation from happening. So you're probably okay. So, Terence, that was a lot of questions for that video. I hope you found those answers useful, and hope to see you on the air sometime. So please help feed the algorithm by clicking on like and subscribing and sharing, and also, if you would like to help support this channel, you may do so through Patreon, or just several different ways on PayPal and so on. By the way, I'm going to be starting a new thing for Patreon patrons. They're going to start getting the videos early. Now, we're going to start that as soon as we can get all the technical hurdles cleared to that. And so that'll be a little bit of a sort of a reason to go ahead and become a patron. So, Terence, thank you for your question, and until we next meet, 73.